Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on YouTube. And my name is Ann Madison. I'm the director of Peace Restored, and we're a nonprofit that works with women that have been through various difficult life experiences. We focus on the areas of trauma, abuse, and grief. If one of these are issues that you struggle with either currently, or maybe you know someone who has been through one of these, we're going to link our website and everything down below. Feel free to reach out to us on our website. You can connect through us through email or schedule an appointment to meet with us, and we're happy to do that. And you don't have to live here in Indiana, which is where we're based out of. You can really live anywhere. With the gift of technology, we're able to connect with you. So please take advantage of that, and we'll be excited to connect with you. But in addition to that, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, we would encourage you to do that as well. Each month we're producing a topic on, or a video series on a different topic. This month we are working on the topic of generosity. The last 2 months we have covered encouragement and stress. So if you haven't watched our videos, please go back and find those. And again, we'll have those linked in our description below. So today with me is Taylor. If you've been watching our videos, you know Taylor's on staff with us at Peace Restored. And she works with us remotely from Kentucky. And we just are so excited to have her be a part of us. So Taylor, today you're going to talk with us about generosity and help us have a little bit of personal application stories, or maybe stories of how you've seen that played out with others. So why don't you go ahead and just start talking a little bit about generosity and some things that you've learned about that and how you'd like to talk about generosity today.
Sure. So if you've seen the last few videos, we talked about how generosity is an overflow of thankfulness. I believe that was mentioned in the first video that Ann talked about. And then in the next video in our series, we talked about how generosity is doesn't have to be monetary. So I wanted to share a few stories with you, two that are not monetary, about giving and being generous with your time and your possessions, and then another that is about money, because generosity can also be monetary, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So that's what I'd like to do.
Okay. Well, that'll be great to be able to hear those stories, because I think hearing how other people walk that out kind of give us ideas sometimes of how we can do that. Because often I think when we think of the word generosity, we think of money is, oh, I have to give, but not everybody has money to give, especially right now in our current climate. They may not have a lot to give. But I think we can all challenge each other to say we probably have more to give than what we think we do. So why don't you start out with one of those, you pick the story you'd like to start with, because I know you have a couple of them, and then we'll talk a little bit about that one. So which story would you like to start with today?
I'm going to start with a story about possessions.
Okay.
That's the story. It has to do with possessions. And how we can give of our resources. So it doesn't necessarily have to be possession, but for our purposes, it is possession. So this is a story I've actually heard. I didn't experience this story. It's it's someone else's story. I'm just using it for our purposes. And you've probably heard a story somewhat similar, but this is kind of a grand gesture story. But of course, when you're giving of resources and possessions, it doesn't have to be this big. There's a guy, he's teaching a class. I don't remember the exact class, but he was teaching a class, and there was all these pretty young people in it. And there was a single mom in the class. She had a few children, and obviously she's a mom. And her car had broken down that morning, or sometime very recently. Her car had broken down, and she went to the class, and she was so upset about her car because, she worked multiple jobs. She had to have a way for transportation, and she was telling the class about this, and she was just kind of like, and I'm going to have to take the bus, and I'm just going to have to do what I have to do. And the guy teaching the class, was surprised by that. He was surprised by how resilient she was. But if you're a mom of young kids and you're alone and doing that by yourself, you don't really have time to worry. You just kind of have to get it done.
Yeah.
And she, the guy was like, he was kind of moved by that. And he was a little more well off teaching this class. And he had recently purchased a car. It was like a new to him car. It was used. And he had purchased it just because he wanted another car. He had really no reason to buy this car. And he heard the young mom's story, and he threw her the keys to the car, and he said, "It's yours." And she was a little taken back at first by him giving her a car.
Yeah.
And she didn't want to accept the gift, and he insisted, and she asked him how much she owed him because she couldn't believe this was a gift. And he said, "Nothing. It's really yours. We'll get the paperwork worked out tomorrow, but the car's yours. You can have it. You need it." And he gave her the car.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? I mean, because, he gave out of a gift that he had of something in his abundance that he had in his home. And so he was able to give that to her. So I'm sure we probably all have things that we have maybe extra of. It may not be a car, but it may be just something we have extra of. It may be there's some place that needs a gift of books, and we have extra books laying around, and we can gift that to someone else. So maybe it's just a good challenge for us to look around and see what it is that we have that we can be generous with. That's a great story. Thank you for that, Taylor. So what's your next story on?
The next story is about a church. It's about my church specifically, but I'm
okay. So you've lived this story, so that's good.
Yeah. So, although, yeah, I've lived the story, but so it's about a church and money, which I think kind of odd to say in the same sentence sometimes, but that's what it's about. So our church, about a year ago, maybe, moved into a new building. And if you don't know how churches do this, churches typically have a meeting with all the members of the church that lays out an agenda, and they have, in that agenda is the budget. And it allocates what every dollar is going to, because it's used for accountability purposes within churches. And so they laid that out for us as members, and we were getting ready to move into this new building. Well, they proposed a budget that exceeded our current budget as a church. So that means that we were not giving enough for the budget they were proposing. And the leaders had stepped out in faith to ask the members to give more than they had been before, because they were showing example of just stepping out in faith by doing this. And they asked the church to make a commitment to prayerfully give more than they had been before. And the church was really challenged by that. And we ended up moving into the new building out of faith, because like I said, the budget exceeded that. And when we moved into the new building, we learned, I don't remember how long it was later, but we learned that we had exceeded the budget that they asked. And we had met that budget. Like, we had a timeline to meet that budget, and we had exceeded it earlier than they asked. Wow. So God stirred a lot of hearts in our church, and people just, I think, realized that our money is not ours. It's everything we have belongs to the Lord. And so when we're giving it to him, we're not really giving it to him. We're just kind of giving it back, because he gave it to us anyway.
Yeah, that's a great story, how they were able to feel like this is the direction God was leading them. And they said, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to ask that you all kind of dig in and see where you can be generous. And it sounded like they ended up giving above and beyond what was expected. So it's like everybody came together and did that part. I'm imagining nobody there is, giving thousands and thousands of dollars a month. So it's probably everybody came together and gave their part, whether it was $25 or $50 or $100, whatever it was, and putting all those parts together made it to where they could meet this goal. So it's the cooperation of generosity has huge power. Yeah. So I think you have one more story for us.
I do.
Okay.
This one is, it's more personal, and if it kind of piggybacks off of our encouragement for video, where I shared a story about my marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So, context, I am talking about a time period where my husband and I were separated, and I was in a lot of pain. And so one of my friends, she reached out to me one morning. I had woken up, it was probably Saturday, and I was just kind of laying in bed. Like, I had been in bed for a few hours, which is not like me. And she texted me and she asked me how I was. And she was a safe person for me to share this with. So I said, I'm not okay. I'm going to be alone for most of the day. And that was all I said. And she asked if I wanted to be alone. And I said no. And she asked if I wanted to come with her family to this event that was about 45 minutes from where we live. And it was odd that I was with them, but I was also extremely grateful that she offered that and really meant it and allowed me to come with them to that. She invited me into her life, and although we didn't talk about any of the pain I was experiencing at the moment, I was in a lot of pain, but she just through doing that loved me really well, and it meant so much to me that I didn't have to be alone that day. And it was just her giving of her time in a way I don't think a lot of people expect. You don't expect to be invited to this family's event that they're going to, like, in a few hours. But I think it's just a really good example for us to see how we can be creative with giving of our time, because life is busy. And I think the Lord wants us to love people well and serve them well, and we don't have to make it a bunch of service projects or be like really specific about how we do that. We can just invite people into our life and kind of, as we go, love them through that.
Yeah, I think they say that time is one of the most precious resources that we have to give, and that when we're willing to give of our time, because you think about time is something we have limited amounts of, and so for someone to give you their time is a huge gift, and we don't always give that enough value. We just think, oh, they just gave a little bit of time, but it's not just a little bit of time. It's literally part of their life they're giving you when we think of it and things that we're spending. So that's great. I appreciate that, sharing that personal story as well. I think we'd be remiss, though, since we've been talking on the topic of generosity. This is the last of our four parts of the series that we're doing. If we didn't talk about how we, because we are a non-for-profit, and generosity is something that we rely on heavily as an organization, because without the generosity of our donors and other people, we wouldn't be able to exist, we wouldn't be able to do the work that we're doing, we wouldn't be able to serve the people we're serving, and so we rely heavily on generosity. There's a couple of ways that we invite people in through different programs and shopping apps and stuff that people can utilize to be able to give back to us that doesn't have any cost. Would you like to tell our audience about those options that are out there?
Sure.
Okay.
I use them all the time. So,
okay.
So I will say this: there is a blog link for these. If you go to our blog to walk you step by step through that. So, because sometimes it's just easier to see it that way. But so Kroger, we have a partnership with Kroger where if you select us as your non-for-profit, that each time you shop at Kroger, it will give a portion of
your shopping ticket.
Yeah. It'll give a portion of that back to Peace Restored. Mm-hmm. So if you shop at Kroger and you don't have resources to donate to Peace Restored directly, that is a way you can give back. It's just by shopping your normal routine.
Yeah, and they don't add anything to your receipt, do they?
No, they do not.
Yeah. So it's just, they just give back. And I will testify, we get a check directly deposited into our bank account every quarter from Kroger. So we're very thankful for that. So the more people who participate, the larger that check becomes. So yeah. And so there is another option that we have as well.
Yes. So I think everybody, especially during this pandemic, has been using Amazon. And there is so it's a different URL when you go to Amazon. It's automatically programmed into my browser now because I use it. But it's called Amazon Smile. Mm-hmm. And so what you do is you type in www.smile.amazon.com, and it'll take you, if you haven't used it before, it will ask you to select an organization. And then I haven't done this in so long that I'm a little iffy on where it takes you next. So to find this out, I use the blog post to figure this out too. So I'm going to direct you there. But when you shop through Amazon Smile, it does the same thing Kroger does. It gives a portion back to Peace Restored, and it doesn't add anything to your bill, and you get to donate to an organization just by shopping.
Yeah. And we'll try to remember to link those blog articles down below in the description so people can find them really easily. So they'll be able to okay, they keep mentioning these blogs. They'll be down below so people will be able to find them and be able to know how to go in and set these up, because hopefully people will take advantage of them. Because again, it doesn't matter where you live, you can utilize and use these programs. So you can live anywhere that has a Kroger, anywhere that has Amazon delivery, and use those services and put Peace Restored as your designated non-for-profit, and we will receive that check. So we appreciate that. So I also just like to kind of throw in there too that if you are someone who's like, well, I don't necessarily want to mess with all that, but I love to give back to you as an organization, we would be very grateful for that. Monetary gifts are something we rely on heavily. You can go to our website, and again, we'll link that below to where you could have that access to that. You could just give a donation of any amount directly, or you can become a monthly donor. To do that, again, you go through the same process. It's very simple and straightforward to do that, and we'll put all that information below on how to do that. Or maybe you are here locally in Indiana, and you're like, I just really want to come learn more about what you're about and maybe give of my time. We are always looking for volunteers for different things, and maybe now is a time where you're starting to be more comfortable getting back out into the public. We are back into our facility, and so we're starting to take volunteers on again. So if that's something you want to do as well, you can reach out to us as an organization, and we will go through an interview process with you and see if it's a good fit on both sides of the fence, and see if there's a good place for you that would work. So as we talked about today, though, there is a lot of ways that we can be generous with our time, the gifts that God's given us, our monetary, our financial resources. We can definitely be generous in multiple ways, can't we? Yeah. So is there anything else you'd like to say before we end today, Taylor?
Yes.
Okay.
So with generosity, I think what people don't realize is that when you are generous to someone, it sparks that in the other person to be generous as well. So, for example, when the person that invited me into their family time, once husband and I moved into our home that women now, we had kind of remembered that because I had told him about that. And we had remembered that, and we were praying just about God using our home as an open home for people to come and just feel welcome and invited in a safe space. And I just, her doing that sparked that in us, that we would be generous with our time as well, just like she was generous with her time. Mm-hmm. And then our church, the leaders initiating that generosity, sparked generosity in other people. And of course, all of that is God stirring everyone's heart, and He's over all of it, but He's using other people in our lives. So it is not only beneficial to you to be generous, but it can further God's kingdom just by you doing exactly what He's told you to do in being generous with your time or your resources or monetarily.
Yeah. It almost sounds like you're saying generosity is contagious. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end us there. Thank you so much, Taylor. Again, I love those stories you shared with us today. And if you're watching this video for the first time, you might want to just rewind that and listen to those stories again, because I think especially right now, we just need a little bit of encouragement in our world and some good stories. I think we've heard a lot of bad things, and it's even when you're not in the midst of all the chaos that we're in, it's not hard to turn on the TV and hear the bad stuff. And so we're so glad that we can share a little bit of good and hope with you today. So again, hopefully you enjoyed our video today about generosity. And if you'd like to know more about us as an organization, again, our link is down below in the description. And subscribe to our page, and share it with others. So until next time, hope you have a blessed day. Thank you. Bye.